Have you ever wondered why babies sometimes resemble their parents in certain ways, but not in other ways? For example, I have brown eyes, and so do both of my parents, but my ears are shaped way differently than either one of my parents. The reason for this has to do with how genes are inherited, which is the focus of today's lesson. Throughout today's lesson, we're going to be covering a lot of really important terms related to genetics. At the end of it, we're going to have a nice recap of all the main points, so please hang in there. There's going to be a lot of information to cover, but after the lesson, please go ahead and check out this video right here to watch me solve practice problems on this topic, mostly dealing with Punnett squares, which we'll get to in a moment. If you decide that you do want to come back and watch this lesson, well, you're always welcome here. We're never going to turn you away. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with just a scenario. All right, if a man has brown eyes and a woman has brown eyes as well, and they have a child together, what color eyes do you think that their child will have? All right, if you guessed brown, well, you actually only have a 75% chance of being right. Believe it or not, there's a 25% chance that the child is going to end up with blue eyes. How is that possible? Well, okay, to be fair, I didn't give you all the information about the parents. So both parents are what we call carriers for blue eyes. This means that they have an allele for blue eyes. An allele is a different version of a gene. Genes are sequences of DNA that code for a specific trait. All right, so for example, the gene for brown eyes has a couple of different alleles that you can have. You could have the allele for blue eyes. You could have the allele for brown eyes. You could have the allele for green eyes. Every individual has two alleles for any given gene. That's because they get one allele from one parent and another allele from the other parent. So going back to the example, I said both parents are carriers for blue eyes. All right, so this means that they have one allele for brown eyes, and they have another allele for blue eyes. I'm going to represent brown eyes with a capital B, and I'm going to represent blue eyes with a lowercase b. So the dad has big B, little b, and then the mother also has big B, little b. All right, big B for brown eyes, little b for blue eyes. This is what is known as their genotypes, or their genetic makeup. Their phenotype is their physical appearance. So they both have the genotype big B, little b, and they both have the phenotype of having brown eyes. But wait, you may be asking, if they have an allele for brown eyes and an allele for blue eyes, why are their eyes brown? And to that I respond, great question. The answer is because brown eyes is a dominant trait. Traits can be either dominant or recessive. If an individual has both a dominant trait and a recessive trait, the dominant trait will be expressed. Well, not always. This type of dominant and recessive relationship is called complete dominance. Sometimes traits can have incomplete dominance or even something called codominance, but that's a topic for another video. For now, just know that a dominant trait will be expressed over a recessive trait. Alright, I know this is a lot of information so far, but hang in there. The only thing left to explain is how we can figure out the probability of traits in the offspring. Alright, so I mentioned earlier there would be a 75% chance of these two having a child with brown eyes, and only 25% chance of them having a child with the blue eyes. We can figure that out with something called a Punnett square. To make a Punnett square, we start out by drawing four squares connected together like this, like a game of Foursquare. Then we put the genotype of one parent on the top and the genotype of the other parent on the side. In this case, they're both big B, little b. The next step is to fill in the square like so. With this B and this B go here, this B and this B go here, this B and this B go here, and finally, this B and this B are going to go in the last box here. We now have four boxes, each with a different genotype. Each of these boxes is worth 25%. Alright, so for example, the first box here has two big B's. Big B, big B. This is what we call homozygous dominant. The prefix homo means same, and zygous has to do with the allele, so homozygous dominant. Since there's only one big B in this one box right here, there's a 25% chance that their child will have big B, big B. These two boxes have a big B, little b. We call this heterozygous, since they're different. And since there's two of these boxes, and each one is 25%, we have 25% plus 25% in total. There's a 50% chance that the child will have big B, little b. All right, and lastly, this box here has little b, which is what we call homozygous recessive. Since there's only one box, this means that there's a 25% chance that the child will have two little b's or be homozygous recessive. Remember, whenever a dominant allele is present, it will be expressed. So since big B, and big B, little b both have the dominant allele of brown eyes, any offspring with those genotypes will have brown eyes. This means that there is a 75% chance their offspring will have brown eyes and a 25% chance that their offspring will have blue eyes. All right, let's do a quick recap. Every gene in your DNA has two different versions of it that come from each of your parents. These are called alleles. Alleles can be dominant, represented by a capital letter, or recessive, represented by a lowercase letter. Whenever a dominant allele is present, it will be expressed over the recessive allele. This is called complete dominance. We can also figure out the probability of the offspring having different traits if we know the genotypes of the parents using something called a Punnett square. If you found today's lesson helpful, then please like and subscribe for more content to help you ace your next exam. Here's a link to that video again of me solving problems from this topic. As always, have an awesome and educational day.